Yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good? The Boxing Source is checking in here, and this is the Monday, April 25th edition of the Boxing Source radio show. That's right, the host James Bell is here checking in, and we got a few things that we are going to be discussing in this particular episode. We wanted to go through the action that went down over the weekend, including the big event that happened in Wembley Stadium. So we will be going over that. Yes, we will be going over that, and we will also, talk about a couple of things that are coming up this week as we have a lot of action that is going down over in the Madison Square Garden and at the MGM Grand Garden Arena on April 30th. Shout out to those that are listening live here, which is happening on YouTube, but it will be available on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever you use for your podcast apps. Real quick shout out to 210 Boxing TV checking in live. We'll be talking about, of course, what went down in Wembley Stadium. We're going to start off with that, as it was for the WBC Inland Heavyweight Championships. Tyson Fury versus Dylan White. Tyson Fury coming in there as the defending champion with a record of 31 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw, going up against Dylan White, who was the interim WBC champion with a record of 28 wins and 2 losses. He was coming in there, to, kind of like show that, him being the number one contender for the WBC title, him being able to acquire the interim heavyweight title back from his loss to Alexander Povetkin in 2020. He got it back in 2021, and, was trying to position himself to have a fight against Tyson Fury. He did, have an agreement of sorts to face Otto Wallin, but that fight fell through due to a claimed shoulder injury by Dylan White. And if you had been following the Boxing Source, over the tail end of 2021, we did have an extensive interview with Otto Wallin, in reference to that news, as he was preparing to go over to the UK for that fight against Dylan White, but it didn't happen. Dylan White ended up getting a fight with Tyson Fury for that WBC and lineal heavyweight championships. And we all know about the whole thing with the purse bid and, Queensberry Promotions winning a purse bid for like $41 million. And, going into this particular fight, the whole ordeal with MTK Global and Daniel Kinahan, with Kinahan, I'm sorry, y'all, real quick. It looks like it's a wrap for Daniel Kinahan, man. Looks like it's a wrap. A couple of days before this particular fight, you saw that the CEO of MTK Global stepped down, and then following after that, there's no MTK Global. And that's key because Tyson Fury is one of the key guys that had been under the management of MTK Global. You had other guys there from the UK and also the US. You had guys like Josh Taylor, you had guys like Carl Frampton, you had guys like Jamel Herring, among others. And with the shutdown of MTK Global, they kind of like had a whole bunch of questions floating around this particular event and with Tyson Fury. But Tyson Fury, did his best. If y'all seen it leading into the fight, kind of like ducking and dodging the questions like he was ducking and dodging punches or whatever it is, But I mean, that's a whole another story that we'll be, discussing here later on down the line. But let's go into the fight. Over 90,000 fans packed Wembley Stadium for this particular bout between Tyson Fury and Dylan White. Long entries, and long walks for both of those guys. First, Dylan White and Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, came out there, like he was, partying in a party, drinking or whatever it is. Well, he wasn't really drinking, though, but you know what I'm talking about. Gets to, halfway through the entryway sits down on his, proverbial throne as the Gypsy King or whatever he calls himself, and it takes about 30 minutes or something for him to get to the ring. Dylan White was kind of furious about that. But fight still went on. First round was pretty surprising to some folks as we saw Dylan White open the bout as a southpaw. Yes, he's kind of like known for working the body and trying to hit with left hooks, but he started out as a southpaw, to throw off the timing of Tyson Fury. But Tyson Fury was able to adapt. He stayed in the orthodox style for that particular round, was able to work the jab, use his distance, use his height, use his reach, and, pretty much got through that particular round. And then in the second round, it pretty much switched up. You saw Tyson Fury in a southpaw stance and Dylan White in an orthodox stance. But, Tyson Fury, still being the Tyson Fury, he usually is as far as like switching up, giving stutter steps, giving feints before he throws jabs, throwing off the timing of Dylan White. Dylan White, just being up there, with his hands up, not really moving his head, not really moving his body, not really, setting up traps to try to land his big shots. That opened him up for a lot of the jabs and right hands coming from Tyson Fury before Tyson Fury, kind of like came forward to initiate a tie up, try to tie up Dylan White, limit the offense of Dylan White, even though Dylan White was able to land a couple of shots to the body, but it was only like one shot at a time. You didn't see Dylan White really throw combinations or try to set up feints to really land some big shots to where he would fake out Tyson Fury from a defensive standpoint to where, Dylan White could go one way, fake one way, and then go another way and score a big shot or land a big shot that could really try to change the momentum of the fight. But you didn't really have that, that in the second round, not necessarily in the third round either. You kind of like had more of the same coming from Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury really was kind of like dominating when it came to the pace of the fight, when it came to the offense. You saw that, he was very comfortable. Like I said, setting up feints, faking White out, throwing jabs when he could throw the jabs, throw double jabs and throw a right hand, throw some hooks when he's able to, tie up when he was able to, and that's what you got. In the fourth round, you really had some, shenanigans to a certain extent, where there was more tie-ups, more wrestling, more grappling, more pushing, more shoving. You had, Dylan White kind of like pushing up towards the chin and face area of Tyson Fury, almost like it looked like he was putting a forearm or elbow up towards Tyson Fury's chin. And the corner of Tyson Fury didn't necessarily like it. If y'all see it live or you've seen the replays, you saw one of Fury's, brothers throw some water out there in that corner, the corner of where Tyson Fury was when Dylan White was pushing Fury back all the way up to the ropes to that corner, but, a whole lot of roughhousing that was going on in that particular round. But it also did cause a clash of heads, which, made a cut, come up on Dylan White's right eye there in the fourth round. And, that kind of like opened up a little bit more problems for Dylan White over the course of the fifth and sixth round. But fifth round, it seemed like, you saw more of the same. Dylan White really wasn't, to me, kind of like standing in a stance where he could be low to the ground, towards Tyson Fury. When you have guys that are significantly shorter than their opponents, you want to see about having them have difficulties punching down when it comes to jabs and throwing hooks, like punching down. But you got to also move your head. You can't be in a straight line, and you can't, give them a stationary target of sorts, you know? And that's what Dylan White was doing. He was standing upright, he was standing in a straight line, and he only had, pretty much a guard up and didn't really have it to the point where he could just say, hey, I could time Tyson Fury when he's throwing a jab or throwing a combination and see if I could get to him. And then after he throws a jab and try to time the jab, respond with the right, lead right hand, or respond with the left hook, or respond with something to the body. Didn't necessarily do that. He pretty much allowed Tyson Fury to get off his offense and, if need be, either try to grab on the clinch or step off to the side, you know? And that to me just showed that, Tyson Fury was ready for this particular fight, was gearing for this particular fight. And Dylan White wasn't. And, going off of what a couple of fans or a good number of fans are talking about, whether they're from the UK or from the US, you'll talk about, oh, Dylan White, he's number one contender. He should have been the number one contender for a long time. Deontay Wilder should have fought him for the WBC title. That didn't happen. So now here it is after years and years and years of him trying to get that world title shot. This is it. This is his big stage. This is his big shot. And he pretty much, has a dud. He has a dud. Tyson Fury really wasn't in that much trouble over the course of this fight. And then you get to the sixth round. Tyson Fury's comfortable. He's able to get off his offense. And you get to the end of the sixth round. And Tyson Fury throws a jab and throws an uppercut. They pretty much, it kind of like, it does hit Dylan White fairly solidly, but, not flushes like when Dylan White got hit flush by Alexander Povetkin a couple years back for that knockout win by Alexander Povetkin. But he still got hit, by, Tyson Fury. It was a little push. Still, Dylan White fell down to the canvas flat. He was able to get up from that with a count, but the referee, pretty much like gauged what was going down there with Dylan White. And Mark Lyson stopped the bout at the 2:59 mark of round 6 for Tyson Fury to become the WBC and lineal heavyweight champions. He retained those titles, and it, kind of like it scored as his 23rd knockout victory, and his third consecutive stoppage victory there. But, in this particular instance, it was like his first fight back in the UK in a long time. Remember that, when he did have his initial return, he did have a couple of fights there over in that area before having the thing where he fought Deontay Wilder once, then had the co-promotional deal with Top Rank. And then that co-promotional deal, he was able to have those fights over in Vegas. And that, was his thing there. He was able to have fights with Tom Schwartz and Ottawa Lane in Vegas. Then you had Deontay Wilder 2020, where he was able to win that WBC title from Deontay Wilder. And then the following year, he, stopped Deontay Wilder once again. And so this was like his first defense as a world champion over in the UK. Because remember, when he defeated Vladimir Klitschko in 2015 over in, I think it was Dusseldorf, Germany, he never defended those titles. So when he came back, we all, like I said, gone through that whole little thing where he had those couple of fights before Deontay Wilder, the first fight in, December of 2018. Then the 2-fight or the multi-promotional deal. So that's all you have, Tyson Fury. And so he gets that win over Dylan White. It's in front of, over 90,000 fans, breaking that whole thing there with Carl Froch. So Carl Froch can't talk about having 80,000 fans in attendance because Tyson Fury had over 90,000 fans in attendance, right? All right. But after the fight, Tyson Fury, was pretty much saying like, hey, after the trilogy with Deontay Wilder, he's talking with his wife, and his wife was like saying, "Hey, after all of this, you can pack it up, you can pack it in." And in a sense, I think Tyson Fury was saying at that point, it's like, I won, most of the titles when I defeated Vladimir Klitschko. I got the WBC title, defeating Deontay Wilder. So in my career, I've won every single title in the heavyweight division. No, I haven't been undisputed champion, but I've been able to win every belt that's out there in the heavyweight division. And, with that, he kind of like said, hey, I could have, said it was a wrap after defeating Deontay Wilder twice. But he said, listen, I want to have a fight as a world champion over in UK. He was able to do that. He was able to execute and defeat Dylan White in 6 rounds. And so now it seems like he's going, back and forth again. He's had that high and low when it comes to fights. He gets up for fights, gets up for big fights. But after those fights are done, completed, and he's won, he goes down into, a slump or a slumber, And even though he kind of like teased the thing there with Francis Ngannou with a, mixed martial arts type of event, that remains to be seen if that's going to happen between Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. I mean, shoot, you had Tyson Fury in the WWE against Braun Strowman. Yeah, he, kind of like tries to get himself up to, fight, whether it's, in the boxing ring, in the wrestling ring, in the octagon or whatever. That's what Tyson Fury, was trying to do as far as like getting himself going to challenge himself in a sense as a competitor, or as he says, as a fighting man, or whatever he wants to call it. But still, with that, this, it's a lot to remain to be seen when it comes to Tyson Fury in the boxing ring. Because after the fight, you had those knee-jerk reactions about Tyson Fury, talking about, oh my God, he's the greatest fighter of this era, or greatest heavyweight of this era. You could put him up there among the greatest heavyweights of all time. Oh my God, he's beating Vladimir Klitschko. He's beating Deontay Wilder. He's beating Dylan White. He's undefeated. He looks like he's the most complete heavyweight out there. But in my perspective, there's still a little bit more to prove that's out there. Yeah, I know that he's won every single belt in the heavyweight division, but he could have a shot to become the undisputed heavyweight champion. He could have a shot to say, hey, I've beaten the top fighters in the heavyweight division. I know that he may consider Deontay Wilder as the second best heavyweight in the division. But thing about it is, you've had a guy by the name of Alexander Usyk, who became the undisputed cruiserweight champion, move up to heavyweight, and defeat who many considered as the second best heavyweight out there in Anthony Joshua, who won the belts that Tyson Fury gave up after retiring, in a sense, after defeating Vladimir Klitschko. And thing about it is that, hey, Anthony Joshua got those belts one by one. He got the IBF belt. He got the WBA belt. He got the WBO belt by beating Charles Martin, by beating Vladimir Klitschko, by beating Joseph Parker. He's beaten Alexander Povetkin. He's beaten Dominic Breazeale. He beat Carlos Takam. He had, of course, to stumble against Andy Ruiz in Madison Square Garden. He was able to rematch that and defeat Andy Ruiz, in Saudi Arabia. And now he is preparing for a rematch against Alexander Usyk, where if he defeats Alexander Usyk, he's almost having a similar path in his career to Lennox Lewis, who defeated every single fighter that he faced in the ring. Even though he had 2 losses, even though he had 2 stoppage losses, he was able to avenge those losses, And now Anthony Joshua has that opportunity to rematch or get his revenge against Alexander Usyk. He might be able to do it. He might not. But the winner of that fight is going to be, without question, the number 2 heavyweight in the world. And you could have a chance to have the number 1 and number 2 heavyweights in the world face each other for the undisputed championship It would leave no doubt, no questions or anything. But Tyson Fury, kind of like feels like, was up in the air as far as like if he is going to basically continue his professional career. But you also have had some things here where it looks like, hey, you might even see an outside chance that the former unified heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko could return to the ring and try to go up against Tyson Fury. He looks like he wants to uh, mimic what happened years back when George Foreman became the oldest heavyweight champion when he knocked out Michael Moore, at the age of 45. But Vladimir Klitschko is 46 years old, and who knows, he might see if he could get himself back in the ring. There is an article on a boxing scene in reference to that, where he talks about, hey, if he's in good shape, that he may try to go after breaking the record of George Foreman and becoming a heavyweight champion, the oldest heavyweight champion out there. But that remains to be seen. But back to what happens here, what happened with Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. Like I said, Tyson Fury pretty much like executed everything he needed to execute. Dillian Whyte pretty much like had a whole dud in that particular fight. And think about it is that Dillian Whyte had been considered as a top 5 heavyweight. So what does this mean as far as like, one, is Tyson Fury that good that he is that much better than the rest of the heavyweight division? Or or some people could say that after about the top 4 guys, Fury, Fury, Usyk, Joshua, Wilder, if Wilder continues his career, after those 4 guys, how far is it down the the skill level in the heavyweight division where the 5th best guy is that many steps down in comparison to the top 4? You have Dillian Whyte. We had Dillian Whyte. You had someone like a Joseph Parker. You have a Joe Joyce that's out there. You have an Andy Ruiz. You have a Luis Ortiz. You have a few other guys that are out there in the heavyweight division. But are they able to, compete with the top 3 or top 4 guys in the heavyweight division, to where you might see some type of shuffle before, maybe Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder or, someone like Anthony Joshua says, it's a wrap when it comes to their professional boxing careers. That remains to be seen. But on that note, you just had that thing there. Like I said, once again, Tyson Fury with that 6th round knockout victory there, over Dillian Whyte to retain the WBC and lineal heavyweight championships. And that makes him 32-0-1 with 23 wins by way of knockout. I know that, we had like a few other fights that were part of that card. Isaac Lowe got beat up. He got beat up by Nick Ball. I'm sorry. He got beat up after he had a loss in his previous fight. He looked like, and that was like the first loss of his professional career. In his last fight, he tried to get himself back into a winning streak or whatever it is against Nick Ball, and Nick Ball was shorter guy, but but he kind of like fought like you should fight when you're a shorter guy. Get down low, get down to the point where it'll be very, very difficult for the taller man to throw punches down and try to get him to the body or come up with the hooks. And that is what Nick Ball did in that particular bout. He was able to score a 6-round stoppage victory over Isaac Lowe. I mean, and that was just a beat down. Also, a notable in that card, you had Tommy Fury get a decision victory over Daniel Bosienski. Hopefully I said that right. Bosienski. And yes, that is the same Tommy Fury that was supposed to fight Big Paul in Tampa last December. But he claimed injury. He couldn't make it to that fight. But after this particular bout, Jake Paul is still, he was talking trash. He was like, "Listen, I was able to knock out Tyron Woodley in front of a packed house there in the Amalie Arena or St. Pete Times Forum or whatever these got people call these arenas nowadays. They pretty much change every 10 or 15 years or whoever got the most money to sponsor the stadiums. But Paul was able to do that, and he wants to still see if he could get it in there with Tommy Fury. Yeah, we know that Jake Paul is a reality TV guy. Tommy Fury is, in a sense, a reality TV guy himself. So you get two reality TV people clashing in there for a boxing match. It might happen later this year. Who knows? I want to still try to make it happen. But that is like most of the stuff that happened in Wembley Stadium on April 23rd. We able to go through all of that and execute that. Another thing that happened in Friday, you did have the WBO interim. Yeah, he says the interim title. It is an interim title there in the bantamweight division, as you had Paul Butler going up against Jonas Sultan. It should have been Paul Butler there against John Real Casimero. And John Real Casimero, for some reason, had some issues with the British Boxing Board of Control when it comes to sauna use, as it was reported. Jake Donovan reported on that. Shout out to Jake Donovan. He reported that the BBFC had reprimanded John Real Casimero, the WBO bantamweight champion, for improper sauna use, and that at the time put him in danger for not having to fight against Paul Butler for that WBO bantamweight title, and he ended up getting scrapped from that card. But they still didn't strip John Real Casimero of that WBO bantamweight title, and this is after they had the initial fight that was scheduled to happen over I think it was like a few months back, where John Real Casimero had real issues trying to make weight. So they didn't have that fight. And oh my goodness. And he was still able to keep that WBO title at the time. But now I'm not sure if he's able to still keep it. We'll see. It remains to be seen. But Paul Butler still was able to make it in this particular card that was last Friday against Jonas Sultan, and he had a unanimous decision victory over Jonas Sultan. It was a very good performance there from Paul Butler for him to win the WBO interim title, and hopefully he may be elevated to be full champion, full WBO bantamweight champion. I know that there is, a few a few good matchups that could happen there in the bantamweight division when it comes to who's out there. Of course, you have the um, veteran there. That kind of is uh, have Inoue, of course. Naoya Inoue is there as a world champion. You also do have a few other fighters there in the bantamweight division, but it looks like Inoue there and Nonito Donaire, they're supposed to be getting it on. Hopefully, that fight happens in the near future as a unification bout. But then after that, you could have Paul Butler if he's elevated to full champion. I know that you had John Real Casimero that could have fought Naoya Inoue, but after multiple occasions, that fight has not been able to happen. So my thing is that once you have this thing there with Nonito Donaire and Naoya Inoue, you can have them. The winner of that, basically is the top guy there in the bantamweight division. But when it comes to having a maybe a undisputed champion in that bantamweight division, it would kind of like see if you would have it to the point where you get someone like Paul Butler, who could be elevated to full champion, and then he would be able to go up against maybe that winner of Inoue versus Donaire, and you could have an undisputed champion in the bantamweight division. But that is one thing that wanted to kind of like go into as far as like the bantamweight division, having it be cleared up a little bit with the unification bout. Maybe Inoue and Donaire, you get that rematch because that first fight was, fight of the year, when it happened. So that was fight of the year. But so a rematch between those two, you could have three of the four major titles be unified in that particular bout. And then the final piece would be the WBO bantamweight title. But maybe we could have an undisputed bantamweight champion in 2022. But that remains to be seen. Now, going forward, we have some action that's coming up on April 30th. A lot of action actually that's coming up on April 30th. First, I want to start off with the event that is happening in Madison Square Garden that is headlined by Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano, and that will be for the undisputed lightweight titles. Of course, Katie Taylor comes in there as defending undisputed champion. She is there undefeated 20 and 0 there. And she is considered as the top pound for pound a women's fighter, according to like I think it's ESPN and Ring Magazine and stuff like that. I wouldn't say she's the number one pound for pound fighter. That goes to Clarissa Shields. But anyway, you got Katie Taylor going up against Amanda Serrano, the veteran, 42 wins, only one loss, one draw, multi-division champion. I think it's what 7 divisions that she has been a world champion. She, had been the unified featherweight champion recently before having her fight against Miriam Gutierrez. That was at Tampa, Florida, as part of that Jake Paul card versus Tyron Woodley. There, where she, did get a unanimous decision victory. She beat up Miriam Gutierrez over 10 rounds. But she now is here from Brooklyn, New York, now has a main event in the world's most famous arena in Madison Square Garden. And it is the first time in the history of Madison Square Garden that a combat sports event is headlined by, female main event, So that is, that's big, that's huge. It's for, like I said, the undisputed lightweight title. Two of the more famous fighters there in women's boxing, and something that I'm definitely looking forward to for these two fighters, and also looking forward to the card for having that card be a good success. You know what I mean? So I've kind of I've talked with both Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. This was back when they had the press conference there in Madison Square Garden a couple months back to announce this fight. And so I feel like that is going to be one fight that is going to be a high action fight. Both Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano are very active in the ring. And the thing is that some are kind of like saying that, hey, Amanda Serrano is there with 42 wins, and 30 of those wins were by way of knockout or stoppage. So I mean, that's more. That's 10 more knockouts than Katie Taylor has fights, and I know Katie Taylor is a decorated, um, fighter, gold medalist. Like I said, undisputed champion, um, and considered by some as a top pound for pound fighter. But now we're gonna see how that is going to shape up. You know, on April 30th in Madison Square Garden, and we also have another undisputed title fight that will take place on this card. Yep, that's right. You're gonna have Franchon Cruz Zerm versus Ilan Cederus for the super middleweight championships, the undisputed super middleweight championships. You did have Franchon Cruz Zerm on the Boxing Source YouTube page. We did have a full-fledged interview with Franchon Cruz Zerm talking about this particular fight and looking forward to having this fight, you know, and it's something where she kind of like is gonna come, I would say, full circle, so to speak, as far as like being an undisputed champion, coming from her debut where she fought Clarissa Shields in her debut back in 2016, but she had not lost a bout until the whole little fiasco with Alejandra Jimenez, and if you go back to around that time, the beginning of 2020, that January of 2020. After that particular fight, it was a whole, mess with that particular bout. So that had been cleared up. Franchon Cruz Zern got her titles back, and now she's going to fight for the undisputed super middleweight titles against Ellen Cederus, who is 8-0 there, and she's coming in there with the IBF and WBA super middleweight titles. So that is another key fight there in women's boxing, and it is for the undisputed super middleweight titles. You also have a couple of other fights on the card, including Jesse Vargas versus Liam Beefy Smith in the super welterweight division. You also have Austin Ammo Williams against Trudell Booker, a fight between two undefeated guys there. So that's going to be good. You also have Galal Yafai, the recent signee of Matchroom Boxing, going up against Miguel Cartagena there, and Khalil Cole is going up against William Langston in that card at Madison Square Garden. So that's going to be a big thing there at Madison Square Garden. But also, you have another big fight happening in the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, as you have a unification bout in the super featherweight division. The WBC super featherweight champion Oscar Valdez goes up against the WBO super featherweight champion Shakur Stevenson. And man, that is going to be a huge bout between two undefeated fighters. Unification bout is about that, has been talked about over the past couple of years to see if it was going to happen. First, in the featherweight division, when Oscar Valdez was a WBO featherweight champion and Shakur Stevenson got his way up to becoming the WBO mandatory challenger. But then Oscar Valdez eventually vacated that belt, moved up to the super featherweight division, and he had his bout against Miguel Berchelt for the WBC super featherweight championship, and scored, one of his best performances of his career, capped off with a strong candidate for knockout of the year, over Miguel Berchelt for him to win that WBC title, but he followed that up against Robson Conceicao, who was undefeated, and we saw about what was happening surrounding that particular bout in reference to Oscar Valdez, him, having a positive test for what was viewed as an illegal substance. He pretty much said it came from, drinking, tea or whatever it is. But he was able to keep that WBC super featherweight title. And now here he is against Shakur Stevenson, the Olympic silver medalist, guy that eventually won that WBO featherweight title before moving up to the super featherweight division and then eventually winning the WBO super featherweight title over Jamel Herring in Atlanta, Georgia last year. And Shakur Stevenson, has said that he's been waiting for this particular fight for a long time. That he wants to, pretty much show up and show out. That he feels like, if he is able to get this win, that some people should be able to consider him as one of the most talented fighters in the sport and probably put him under consideration for top 10 pound for pound fighters in the sport, But it could also be said for Oscar Valdez. I mean, he had, been in the game for a while. He had been a world champion pretty much before Shakur Stevenson had started his professional career. He had held the WBO featherweight title since 2016. And so it had been a long time that he was able to, defend that WBO title until, Shakur Stevenson had been the number one contender. But that fight didn't happen in featherweight. But now it's happening in super featherweight. And both of these guys are, looks like, at the top of their games at this particular point, And so that is going to be a key bout there. You did have, a conference call with, Shakur Stevenson involved and Oscar Valdez involved. They were able to answer, questions from the media. Shakur Stevenson did answer, one question here from myself in reference to him, being considered amongst the top fighters pound for pound if he is able to get this win over Oscar Valdez. And for Oscar Valdez, one thing that he kind of like pointed out is that, a good number of people that seemed like said that, maybe Oscar Valdez was reluctant to fight Shakur Stevenson since the fight hadn't happened up until now. And he's saying that wasn't the case. And that now he's saying like, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to fight and go after Shakur Stevenson and kind of like prove myself as one of those guys that is one of the best guys there, not only in the super featherweight division, but pretty much around the sport of boxing. And if he gets this win over Shakur Stevenson, I mean, he would hand Shakur Stevenson his first loss in his professional career, and that would kind of like send some shockwaves around the sport of boxing to some, because they kind of like consider Shakur Stevenson as a young talent that is very, very good. That could be, considered amongst those young fighters that are out there, like Ryan Garcia, like Devin Haney, up to a point like, Teofimo Lopez, among those guys, but, here in this particular instance, we got to see like how that kind of like shapes itself out, how this unification bout for the WBC and WBO super featherweight title shapes up between Oscar Valdez and Shakur Stevenson. Now, we do have more, coming from that particular fight card, as you're going to have, I think it's like in the co-feature bout, right? You're going to have Keyshawn Davis, right? Keyshawn Davis is going to be involved in this fight card, and also he is going up against Esteban Sanchez, right, in the co-feature bout. Keyshawn Davis is one fighter that kind of like said that he is an understudy of Shakur Stevenson. He went to the Olympics, he got a silver medal, just like Shakur Stevenson. They consider themselves brothers. And the conference call, when Davis did come up on that conference call, we pretty much called Shakur Stevenson, like his big brother. But also, him, being under the tutelage of Bomac, Brian McIntyre, and Terrence but Crawford, that he has, that type of family tree where he can learn from Shakur Stevenson and learn from Terrence Crawford. He's trained there by Bomac. You have, of course, part of that team there, B&B, Esau, and Red. Also, is involved there with Keyshawn Davis. And, a lot of people kind of like feel like Davis is one of those young fighters that could develop himself later on down the line as the next wave of young fighters that could be very successful in the near future. You have someone like Keyshawn Davis. You have, his brothers there that's coming up too. You have Tiger Johnson. That's also a recent top ranked signee. Among others that are young, that are coming up, undefeated, building up their profile. That after maybe next year or the year after that, you can see them contending for world titles. But Keyshawn Davis will be facing Esteban Sanchez in an 8-round co-feature bout there. And you also will have Nico Ali Walsh going up against Alejandro Ibarra there. And all of that will be shown live on ESPN starting at 10 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night. You'll also have Raymond Murataya, and you'll also have Andres Cortez and Abdullah Mason. That'll be part of the undercard there, and that will be on ESPN Plus, and that will start at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time there. So, I mean, like I said, Shakur Stevenson, Oscar Valdez, unified super featherweight championships. That's going to be a big bout there on Saturday night. You'll also, have, like I said, Katie Taylor there going up against Amanda Serrano for the undisputed lightweight titles in Madison Square Garden. And, Shakur Stevenson in the conference call, kind of like talked about that Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano fight as he kind of like tried to push for the timing of, Valdez versus Stevenson to be a little bit after when Taylor Serrano happens because they want to see if they could have more focus on Taylor versus Serrano to have more eyes watch that particular fight, and that gets more interest, more buzz, and and everything like that, so that it gets its proper place as far as like interest from boxing fans or those that don't necessarily follow the sport of boxing as much as some others may. You know what I mean? So shout out to Shakur Stevenson on that note when it comes to saying, hey, this is one of the biggest events in boxing, in women's boxing, to have Taylor and Serrano fight in Madison Square Garden. So let them have that spotlight first and have that fight happen from start to finish before me and Oscar Valdez get it on for the WBC and WBO Super Featherweight Championships. So you do have that, and that, and I did kind of like go over the whole card for what's happening in Madison Square Garden and over in the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Yep, that's right. So that kind of like covers mostly everything that's happening there on Saturday night. And after all that is, said and done, you know, you're going to have the fights on what they would say is Cinco de Mayo weekend. headlined by Dimitri Bivol and Canelo Alvarez. Therefore, that 175-pound championship. Um, we'll probably go a little bit more in depth in for that fight next weekend. You know, as you know, we're gonna have Canelo Alvarez seeing if he could get a title at the 175-pound division once again. And you know that is part of the uh, deal or the fight deal that Canelo Alvarez has on the zone, where he is planning to face first Dimitri Bivol, and then after that, Gennady Golovkin once again. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Gennady Golovkin. Yeah, I know that Gennady Golovkin, beat Ryota Murata, to unify titles in the middleweight division. But come on, y'all. Canelo versus Golovkin again. Come on, y'all. Like, I'm sorry, but I I don't want to see it again, man. I don't care. I don't care what these other reporters have been talking about. Who was it? I don't think it's like Mike Coppinger or maybe it's Sergio Mora or some of those other guys. Most of them that would be working on the zone. They say they want to see it again. I don't want to see it again, man. I'm sorry. I just don't. Man, that second fight happened almost 5 years ago? Come on, man. We need to see something else, man. Come on. What is we doing? What are we doing, man? What are we doing, y'all? What are we doing? But that looks like it's part of your deal. But Canelo Alvarez still has a task at hand going up against Dimitri Bivol for that WBO title, the light heavyweight division. So it remains to be seen if Canelo Alvarez is able to execute what he needs to execute there in that instance. But hey, he's able to do it. Props to him. He's able to do it. He would hand Dimitri Bivol his first loss of his professional career. But after that, Canelo Golovkin 3. Come on, man. I just don't know, man. I just don't know. But with that being said, that kind of covers everything we cover here in this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. We thank everyone here that has been listening live, and for those that are going to listen on iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you use for your favorite podcast, we greatly appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, you can subscribe so that you can listen to every single episode that we have. And as we say, according to reports, this is the longest running boxing podcast in existence. That's right, the longest running boxing podcast in existence. We started a good while back, and coming next week. That's right, coming next week, right? It'll be the should be the 7th season of the Boxing Source Radio Show. Should be 7, right? And that should tell you how long that we have been doing this thing, But on that note, folks, I'm putting a wrap to this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. And like I say at the end of every show, folks, the point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.